Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and deceased. It is I am Mighty Sophia here to break down for you guys the penultimate episode of Season 5. We are on episode 15, Try, so spoiler alert before we dive into the mad thick of things, as I will be bearing all in this review, and without further ado, let us kick it. Let us get right into it. So, this has been such a fascinating season. I know that a lot of people had initially expressed concern about the idea of Rick and his group re-entering some kind of community that's risen up in the midst of the chaos that they know all too well, and it seems that every time that they tried to establish themselves somewhere new, there is some central conflict, some ideological friction where the core group is trying to survive in this way, and they having their perspective from the road and all the traumas they've endured, well, it just does not align quite so well. And that, of course, is definitely what we see in this episode. And I think that what Try serves as, at this point in the season, is the grand and glorious build-up to the climactic, who freaking knows what's gonna happen at the end. But it's coming next week, and it's gonna be a 90-minute episode, or more like, 60, 70, what with all the commercial breaks, but hey, it's gonna be a blast of epic proportions, and I've heard little tidbits from the cast saying that we shall be screaming at our televisions, but that's pretty much what I do every single week, so that's like just kind of my base level. So I don't know what that's exactly gonna mean for me, and if I should be scared for my health and have 911 on speed dial. But, it's quite possible. This is the life that I live, with elevated blood pressure at all times. But, yeah, there was a lot of very fascinating elements. Again, not too bombastic of an episode, but certainly some surprising moments that packed very intense punch. And of course, I will, at the very end of this review, get into the nit and the grit with Rick. But let's take a quick gander at where the rest of our characters are at. I think that the one main weakness of the show at this point in time is merely its scope and magnitude as far as characters are concerned, because we have so many like major main characters in Rick's group. All of these people who belong to this core family that we identify with the most, and it's really difficult to focus on all of them and to give their different plot arcs the time of day that they perhaps deserve. And that really is just kind of the limitation of just being in a TV show, honestly. They could go on forever and a day and crank out like 20-some episodes a season, but that's one freaking tall order. I definitely think that they're doing a really fine job of establishing a certain tone and of balancing a lot of other elements out in the show. It's just tough when, like, for example, we saw last week with Father Gabriel is whispering sinister nothings to Deanna. Not exactly nothings, being that he is planting further seeds of doubt in Deanna's already flourishing garden of skepticism about her decision to let this group into their golden gates. Man, I'm freaking sweating up a storm here. Woof! It is that time of week, Sundays, bloody Sundays. But so we saw that, and then we saw Maggie actually listening to that conversation, and we didn't get to see any of that this week. So again, it's all kind of like background stuff. Tensions are brewing at every corner, and we feel that. We feel that tension in the scenery, in like every time that we kind of assume Rick's point of view, and as he's looking around, eyes darting all crazy, and here is this seeming suburban bliss all around him, but it's just not the case. Not quite the paradise that it would seem compared to what's happening outside, being that everybody who enters this place, this community, is either there or forced to leave. there's a very strange selection process that unfortunately allows some incredibly problematic individuals to hold a lot of power. So that's kind of what we're seeing on Rick's end. We're seeing the PTSD that Sasha is struggling with. We are seeing with Enid, is that her name? Or not Rick, Carl's new lady friend. He had a little bit more luck in the world of romancing in this week's episode. Don't really know about the future of Rick and Jesse at this point. There are some things that I'm a little bit disturbed by with regards to kind of their connection, but I'll get into that later. So we're seeing all this friction and this people like Michonne and Glenn who are longing to find their place in this community and in this system, but trying to deal with the other members of the family that are finding themselves on the periphery, on the edge, or even unable to cope completely. You know, I think it was really interesting that we got to see Michonne and Rosita go out of the walls together. You know, something funny about this episode is it reminded me a little bit of the musical Into the Woods. Like, everybody is going on their own respective journeys, like, into the woods, into the woods to kill all the things. And yeah, just lots of interesting shenanigans out there. Most of them involving walkers and varying states of mental health. But yeah, so we see that Sasha has run off, and she's going to take on as many freaking walkers as she can handle, which she is one talented lady when it comes to her marksmanship. So, you know, it's not so much a matter of her like putting her life in danger. It's kind of more focusing on her degrading mental state and the stress that she's experiencing, unable to simply be on the defensive, because it's like no matter what she does, she is just encountered by loss after loss after loss. First Bob, then Tyrese, and then even Noah, who I guess was someone who she tried to impart hope to, telling him that he was gonna make it. So she kind of takes that upon herself. It's almost that sort of like, and not to be insensitive, but that kind of everything I touch dies kind of vibe, or like at least that's what I felt from that scene where she is. After she and Rosita and Michonne take out a freaking clan of walkers and they're standing in the wreckage of everything, Michonne and Rosita are trying to talk Sasha back into the fold, back into their new home. And she's expressing how, you know, everything has worked out for you guys so far. Like, this was what Michonne wanted, was to be here. But what does Sasha want? That's what we really don't exactly know. Like, it's kind of tough to know the character of Sasha because we've seen her a lot of the time reacting to things around her, but we don't really know her as like a core individual yet, which is strange since she's been around since like what, season 3? But at the same time, it's that enormous ensemble cast that we have going on and trying to make sure that each character is touched upon. We're seeing all these interactions, all these different elements and nuances. It's tough. It really is, just logistically speaking. And so, like, I get that we haven't really had a lot of time to establish, like, what's really going on in Sasha's head. But I just hope that we don't lose her before we know what that is. Like, I mean, it reminds me of kind of the arc that we got with Herschel, where we got to know him so well, and it was both through himself and his interactions with others. It wasn't all this kind of just reactionary stuff that was going on. So I hope that things go past that for Sasha and that we really get to know her and understand, because right now it's like, yeah, she's had these painful losses, but where does she come from? And we got to learn a lot about Tyrese, even in his final moments, more than it seems like we ever knew about him. So I don't want to set that precedent of like, well, before we stick an axe in their skull, let us do this beautiful, it's like a pre-death tribute in which we finally get to know who they really are, and then they're taken away so we can feel that loss. you know, I just hope that doesn't happen. But anyways, so that was kind of a long tangent of sorts. But yeah, Michonne has been in a really interesting place, and I find it so fascinating, just how much she wanted to be in Alexandria, and that in contrast to where we first encountered her with Andrea and her dual walkers in tow on chains, you know, just a very different image of seemingly very different Michonne. But we see in that moment in the woods where she has these quick flashbacks to who she was and where she was at, and then she too began to join in the killer lady killing spree in order to kind of, I mean, there's a lot of ways to explain why Rosita and Michonne and Sasha are doing what they're doing out there. But Michonne does say, like, this is for her. Sasha keeps insisting, I don't need your help, I don't need your help, I don't need your help. And Michonne's like, no, I'm trying to help myself, actually. And we see that Rosita goes in on it, too. So they're all kind of out hitting the the proverbial punching bag, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more than just a stress relief. It's connecting with who they've really become. And you know, it all begs that question of, like, is who you are what you do, or does what you do inform who you are? Does that make sense? You know, because they're not just killers of the undead, but the fact that they've had to live in this defensive way, constantly tuned into everything around them, ready to go at any time, striving together to go forward to something, like, that is where they feel alive, and yet also the most pain. So I think the episode did a really good job of drawing attention to kind of that dynamic. And then conversely, we get to see, oh my gosh, I said her name earlier and I just forgot it again. It's Enid. Well, I'm like spoonerizing it in my head. Enid and Carl go off on their delightful little lovers romp in the forest. Not that kind of romp. Not that kind of romp. We're not talking like friggin' Lori and Shane. But, yeah, no. Anyways, so they kind of have a bonding moment too over the loss of their mothers, which is like, oof, that was a sneaker wave of emotions that hit me, like, just as they were starting to talk about it. And then, yeah, like, Carl's trying to kind of pick her brain and figure out, you know, where was she when all this hit, and where has she been? And then, yeah, so that snuck right up on me, and I did not appreciate that little barb into the heart. But, and then the two of them experience their intimate little moment in the cove of the tree as they're hiding from walkers. And Enid makes a very, and I apologize actually if I got the name totally wrong and I'm just making this up. It'll be my little nickname. But she says that, you know, this is their world, or it's their world now. We're just living in it, with regards to the walkers that they're surrounded by. And this girl is she's very acutely aware, unlike a lot of the Alexandrian residents, that, yeah, this is life. This is the way it is. And that's another big pervading theme of this entire half of the season, is like, what is truly living? It's this sort of, fiction versus reality. A lot of the Alexandrians are living fiction. I mean, I'm still freaking baffled by the concept of, like, you know, the pre-made noodles that they get to boil, making cookies and moving a garage door, just all of these things that are now novelties, you know, but at the same time just seems so false. The fact that they have power and plumbing and electricity while all this is going on, like, national infrastructures are in complete and utter disrepair and dysfunction, and yet here's this. And yeah, and so we get to see a lot of that, like, in with Enid and Carl as well, sort of expressing that they feel most in their element out in the woods, able to run, move freely, even though there is danger quite literally lurking around every corner in this place, it's still like, this makes sense. This is what keeps your heart beating, you know? And I really get that, as much as a person living in non-apocalyptic times can. But I can definitely fathom that simply because of my ability to so abundantly empathize with these survivors. And so then going back inside of the walls, we get to see Glenn dealing with Nicholas in his own way. And I'm glad that Glenn, you know, he talked to Rick earlier on in the episode saying that he totally could have done something to Nicholas, left him behind, made up some accident story and just moved forward. But Glenn he's trying to do his part as well to kind of remove that split, that rift between us and them, the othering that's kind of going on within Rick's group, where they can in no way intermingle or coexist with these people. It's like oil and water, you know. So Glenn is making this really very valiant effort to be a part of things and to let Nicholas know that he done saved his ass, like big time. And so while Nicholas is taking this whole thing very personally and as some kind of like affront to his ego that now he can't go outside the walls and yada yada yada, Glenn makes it very clear that the way that he is going forth with this and letting Nicholas know that he really shouldn't be alive at this point in the game is in turn saving him. He says, you know, you don't get to be a provider for this community, because clearly the only thing you are providing is a extremely visceral death by your poor choices. And yeah, it's really not going to work anymore. That is not going to fly. Nobody is going to fall by your hand anymore. You just stay inside these walls where you belong. And so he gets put right in his place, very properly so. Glenn takes, he's definitely on the opposite end of the spectrum as compared to Rick this week. The two of them have adapted, like, it almost seems like there's a lot of different leadership strategies at work within Rick's group. Because here's Rick way over in cuckoo land compared to some others. And I guess, well, you know, to kind of back down from that, he and Sasha are almost they're kind of in a similar place. I mean, really not. It's hard to kind of equate their respective struggles and say that they're going through the exact same thing. But we see that outright refusal to integrate and that frustration with the way that everything is transpired. Also interesting to see the split between Michonne and Rick, who have both been appointed as constables and the upholders of the law in this community. And Rick's idea of law, what he proposes based on his knowledge of the outside, is deemed lawlessness by pretty much everybody else within. Except for Carol. Like, she's got his back for sure. She's the angel devil on the shoulder of sorts. But, yeah, so he's on that end, and then Michonne comes up at the very last second, delivers him a nice little knock to the noggin, to shut up his seemingly mad ravings. But again, the things that he's saying make a lot of sense. They just kind of feel crazy because, well, there's a lot of things mixed in with Rick's case. But there's both division between Rick's group and the Alexandrians, as well as division within Rick's group as far as, like, what exactly feels wrong about this place. Everybody has kind of a different take on what feels wrong, you know? So I guess that I really do need to just go ahead and open the can of worms that is the curious case of Rick Grimes and the savior complex that he has towards Jesse. So, you know, finding that Rick is becoming more and more like Shane in these recent episodes and seasons. Quite disturbingly so, because, like, you know, we see this kind of intense, like, I don't know if it's jealousy as far as how he views Jesse and then views Pete in light of what he feels about Jesse, but the way that he just kind of storms in, it's like, of course he's doing a good thing by trying to get Jesse away from this malicious abuser. And Carol is backing that 110%, like, based on her experiences with Ed earlier on, who, praise be unto Lord, was made very quick work of in the first season. But, yeah, so Rick is just in a really weird and dark place. And as much as he stands to lead whatever revolution is to come, and I can see him coming into that place, he's definitely got a lot of volatility going on here, and just kind of a forcefulness that I think even Jessie herself finds frightening until... But then what I found weird was when she was asking him, like, would you do this for just anyone? And he's like, no, which is basically his way of saying, girl, I like you, and we're gonna deal with that other dude. Get him out of the picture. And it just felt a little weird, because then all of a sudden she's like totally on board for it. So that just, the whole exchange felt a little bit off to me, and I don't really know, I don't know how long Jesse's supposed to be in the picture, or what exactly all of this is going to lead to. But it's definitely, even though Rick is coming in and trying to diffuse this situation and to maintain safety, whatever, the way that he goes about it is so, it's mixed up with all of his struggles and kind of his unstable worldview that he has, his readiness to wield his gun and to declare every single last Alexandrian completely and utterly incapable of handling life anymore. Again, all things that I agree with, because these people don't get it. Like Glenn said earlier on, those walls went up just in the nick of time, and they had the fortune of not knowing what the crap is actually happening outside in the true world. And so, yeah, Michonne shows up in kind of the nick of time as faces are bloodied and all is going to hell. She comes right on up, riding her imaginary steed, knocks Rick out, and that's all we get to see in this episode. That is the grand climax, so I wonder what any exchange between them is going to look like in the future. It appears that Rick is going to be on trial of some sort, and I could understand that. But yeah, I'm very troubled too by Deanna's whole approach to what to do with unsavory community members. The whole, just send them away. I don't think that's going to play out so well in the future. And I am almost 100% sure that we are going to encounter those who have been exiled from the community before. And that's going to have a very ugly face, at least from what I sense and what I anticipate. So Rick's got a lot of wisdom in this. But at the same time, the kind of volatility and manic nature that he conveys all of this with is rather poorly received. But yeah, so I'm nervous about that. Also, okay, we need to talk about that freaking True Detective style scene with Aaron and Daryl discovering that chick tied up to the tree in the woods, the marks on her face, and and also all of the lobbed limbs that have just been kind of sitting around, you know. Whether that is the work of walkers or otherwise, we can assume that the woman who was tied to the tree is a part of something very different. Again, I feel like that could connect with the unhappy campers who got pushed out of Alexandria for not being good people. But yeah, just a lot of great stuff in this episode. We will break all the rest of it down in the comments. Anything that I forgot to mention in this review, we will do it in the downstairs department in the comments. So thank you guys so much for joining me on this incredible and visceral journey through the not fun times of life. But The Walking Dead has been good to us. We've got much to look forward to in this final episode to come, so be sure to stick around for that. Check out my video description for other videos of mine and fun stuff that I've done. And yeah, I am going to take a siesta. See you on the next Sunday, Bloody Sunday, and as always, I will be back before you know it.